I'd like to welcome everyone to this What's New in the CMDB platform webinar for the ServiceNow Vancouver release. We're excited to have you here today. We're going to be talking mainly about the unified map. We call that one view to rule them all. It combines the best of the service map and the dependency views. We're pleased to have a guest here today. Just a reminder that in any presentation like this, we do our best to represent the product and its features as they are now and as they will be in the immediate future. But you shouldn't make any buying decisions based on what we say here today. So we just need to make that legal disclaimer at the beginning of every presentation. Also, a reminder that Live at ServiceNow is a community-based event. There are lots of webinars scheduled right now. Will be in the future. It's a great place to come on and hear experts and product managers talk about what's coming up, what's been released. And so you can use this AI link to get into it. You can also find the recording of this session at that site. So it's a great place if you want to share this or get back to see something that you saw in this deck again, or to share with someone else in your organization. Just a few housekeeping measures. We will spend some time at the end of the presentation for Q&A. Use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen as we move along, and we'll be happy to respond to those. As I noted, it will be on the ServiceNow community, and we would love it if you would fill out a short survey at the end, because the feedback helps us make these presentations better. My name is Michael Hansen. I am a marketing manager here at ServiceNow, and we're joined by an esteemed colleague, Tony Branton. He is a product manager. He has done a lot of the great work that you'll see today and a lot of the great work that's come out recently in the CMDB. So we're happy to have him here. And we'll be turning the majority of the presentation over to him. Once I take care of just a few matters to set some context for the CMDB and all the great work that Tony and his colleagues are doing in the CMDB. Just a reminder that the visibility and the CMDB is really at the foundation of what makes ServiceNow a powerful platform solution. When your teams have visibility to trusted technology data through the CMDB, they can keep digital services running. And when there's a service or outage, they can fix it right away, sometimes before users are even impacted. Some of the value that we want to remind folks of: CMDB feeds better service operations value. Our research indicates that our customers who have implemented a healthy CMDB have 32% faster incident resolutions, 82% fewer failed changes, and 6 times more incidents resolved with problem management than those that don't. But it's not just about service operations outcome. CMDB helps you reduce your hardware and software costs. A fully populated CMDB can help you manage your software licenses better. It can help you plan. You can see all of the applications that run your critical businesses in an application portfolio management. So in our application portfolio management solution, and you don't have to manually enter that information. All that information can be pulled in from automated sources. You can see the technical debt in real time in your systems, both on-premise and on the cloud. We're releasing more and more software development. We'll be talking about one of those today, the Open Telemetry Service Graph Connector that came out in Vancouver. We talked about service operations. The CMDB also feeds a lot of vital security operations and risk operations. So if you want to see the technical debt, the risk that's out there on your CIs, your systems, the old software, the old hardware, It begins with the CMDB. It begins with visibility. And that is not just for traditional platforms. We're getting more and more sophisticated with the cloud. More companies are moving to microservices. More companies are moving to cloud containers. And we'll talk about how we address that. But it really all begins with the relationships and the CIs or configuration items that you capture. And if you haven't been out and looked at the CMDB lately and the new features that are available, please do. The CMDB workspace, which was released just a couple of releases ago, helps you intelligently apply trusted technology data. There's a feature to allow you to do natural language searches. There is the CMDB 360 view that will allow you to harmonize multi-source data coming from agents, coming from agentless discovery, coming from ServiceNow, coming from other trusted sources of information in a 360 view, which will allow you to see all of the sources together, the strengths, weaknesses of any sources, how they're playing together, and will really give you the insight and confidence in the data that you need to go forward, whether it's a software asset implementation or a use case, or whether it's a traditional service operations one. There are also great pre-built dashboards that enable governance and health outcomes for your CMDB. So it's really, as I say, not your father's CMDB. The CMDB is much more automated, and the views are much more powerful than they're ever been. As I stated, there is an intelligent CMDB search now available on the CMDB workspace. This allows you to produce the same kind of powerful multi-table queries that you were used to from the CMDB query, but now you can do it using simple natural language. There's AI and machine learning guidance available to help you select the best search terms. And of course, you can reuse, build from those from the CMDB query builder. So something else to take a look at, IRE for non-CMDB tables. We're applying the same goodness that we use to bring in information and reconcile CMDB and CI data, applying that to general business data, whether it's your department's data, your employee data. The best practices for data management from the CMDB are now being applied to those. So look up that information, but we're specifically here today to talk about the Vancouver release. And there are two big features. We're going to focus mainly on that one view to rule them all, the unified map view. And we'll also talk just a little bit at the end about the service graph connector for open telemetry and some of the capabilities and outcomes and technologies that supports. So the unified map is the best of all current CMDB views in a single unified interface. Sorry. The CMDB, of course, is a powerful distinguishing element of the ServiceNow platform, and you've always had a dependency view that gave you the rich context, detailed relationships, and infinitely adaptable maps that you use to run your business. The service mapping view added more value to that by giving you highly relevant, real-time views of map services. A lot of times, a lot of the logical elements in the CMDB. The unified map is going to combine the best of both views to enable any kind of outcome with all of the relevance of the service map view, with all of the power and configurability of the dependency map view. Now, just a few notes. To be able to see the unified map in action, you need both the Vancouver family release. I think Tony will speak more specifically about that. And you need to have CMDB Workspace version 4 or later. Recommend going to version 5. The November store release that just came out gives us a much more powerful view that Tony will be displaying today. What you'll see with the unified map is that this is going to be coming out incrementally. Right now, it's on the CMDB workspace. We'll be adding it soon to the service mapping workspace. Don't worry about your existing dependency views and service map views. We're not planning on decrementing those anytime soon, but we will be adding to the unified map to more places as it matures. So it really combines the best. I'm going to turn it over now to Tony to talk specifically about the unified map, and he's going to take us past Vancouver a little bit to the November store release and the new goodness that's available from there. Tony, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So yeah, before we sort of launch into a demo, we'll just have a quick run through of some facts and also just a high-level overview of some of the features of Unified Map. So first of all, why Unified Map? Well, the original objective was to consolidate the separate dependency view and service mapping experiences, which were two distinct experiences. They also worked with two different data models. You would expect that, hey, isn't there a single data model for the CMDB? And well, there kind of is, but service mapping sort of adds essentially another layer of metadata on top of that to basically map out application services and build all of the additional information that makes those maps so powerful. Each one of the separate experiences has various aspects of functionality, various features that make them quite useful. But what we wanted to do is bring those into a single experience rather than having multiple experiences that you kind of have to sort of switch between today. The other objective that we had was once we built this new experience, we were building it in a fairly modular fashion such that it could be incorporated into other workspaces in the future. So eventually you will see Unified Map within the service mapping workspace. You'll eventually see it in the service operations workspace, and so on and so forth. Now, how do you activate it? Well, you first of all need to upgrade to Vancouver Patch 3. Then you can go to the ServiceNow store and request an upgrade for the CMDB Workspace version 5 release, which came out about a week ago on the store. There's no licensing implications. Basically, it's provided, it's included with the platform. So if you've already licensed for any application on the ServiceNow platform, you've got access to CMDB Workspace and Unified Map. Next slide, please. Okay, so some key features. So as mentioned, Unified Maps included in CMDB Workspace 5. It actually was introduced in version 4. And version 4 is what you'll get out of the box with Washington, DC release. So when that gets released, you'll have at least a starting point for CMDB Workspace and Unified Map. However, it'll be highly recommended that you would upgrade to the latest store release. Mainly because we continue to evolve and enhance CMDB Workspace. There's additional features that we've been working on more or less tirelessly. And we always want our customers to benefit from all of the rich functionality that we're adding in there. Okay, so it's a modern UX. And when we say modern, there are some things that we did that are fairly different from the way that the traditional experiences have operated in the past. And it has been designed to work with the new workspaces and the new user experience framework that we kicked off around about 18 months ago. We support two different layouts, a vertical and a force-directed layout. You'll see those demoed. We will be adding a horizontal layout in the future. You can search the CMDB for any CI to display in a map. You search by name. In the future, we'll be supporting other things like searching by host name, fully qualified domain name, IP address, hopefully. You're able to adjust relationship levels. So within dependency view today, for those of you that are familiar with it, you've got the ability to say, I want to see 3 relationship levels deep, or I might want to see 5, or I might want to see 15. You can't do that with service mapping today. However, you can do it in Unified Map. So with Unified Map, we were able to now adjust the number of relationship levels that you can see for an application service map, which is fantastic for those very large mapped application services where you may want to progressively reveal the map or only load a portion of it to begin with. We've got some advanced filtering. So this is very much along the lines of the type of filtering that's available in dependency view, although now you can apply it to an application service map. So again, something that wasn't available in service mapping is now available. And that's very useful for being able to sort of, again, filter out and reduce the complexity of a map that you're, working with. We have this the ability to view CI attributes, related application services, related records, and change history for a selected CI on the map. Again, we'll see that in a demo. And then there's an interactive timeline. So again, we're borrowing from service mapping in terms of producing or delivering a timeline capability that allows you to select a point in time in the past and look at the map, see what it looked like at that point in time, and as well as any related activity. So what sort of incidents, change requests, etc., may have been around then. There's a minimap navigator that allows you to navigate around a very large map. You can export a map to PDF. And with application service maps, you now have the ability to view upstream CIs, so things like business applications, service offerings, business capabilities, etc. In addition, you can also see host CIs on the map, so you don't have to switch to a completely different view to actually see which servers, for instance, are supporting which applications on the map. Okay, next slide, and I think we'll move over to the demo. So I will share my screen. Okay, so Unified Map is accessible through CMDB Workspace. We have a quick link that's down the bottom here. Eventually, we'll end up removing the dependency views link once we have Unified Map at a mature enough state. So we'll have a couple of iterations before we get to that point. You can also access Unified Map through any CI record that's opened in CMDB Workspace. So there's an Open Map button on the form, and that will get you to the map. I've already got an application service map opened, so the map will sort of return to kind of like the previous state if you're switching back between the home page and an open map view. The map is divided really into 5 key sections. We have a toolbar, which is brand new for the November release, where we've consolidated all of the unified map controls. Now, we'll be adding additional controls as we add more capability to the map, such as control to adjust the layout, as well as controls, for instance, to potentially move the map into kind of like an edit mode, a refresh button, etc. This toolbar is also going to be leveraged by other workspaces for their own use cases. Down below, you can see the timeline, and that timeline can basically be shown and hidden. We have the minimap navigator that you can see down here. Because this map is like at full size, basically we don't have anything that we can really do in terms of moving the map around, but we'll play around with that a little bit later. There's also the map page itself, as you can see, and we'll have a look at what we can do with the various elements that are displayed there. There's a map filter. So this map filter allows us to, just like in dependency view, filter the map based on things like CI type, the relationship type, a few different attributes. And one new feature that we've done is we've incorporated this sort of CSDM-inspired layer model, where we've basically created some categories and then mapped various CI classes into those categories. So rather than sort of having to select individual CI types to filter out, you can just say, hey, I just want to see, say, the business layer. And if you do that, then you'll get pretty much those extra CI types being added in, provided that they're obviously part of the map. Okay. Now, one of the other things that we can do with map filters is if there's specific filter options that you've set and you say, hey, these are things that I might use routinely, you can actually save it as a preset, and then you can apply that preset at any time in the future. Finally, we've got over on the right-hand side a contextual side panel. So this is where you get more detailed information about CIs. So as you select a CI, you'll start populating this panel. You can also look at things like what are the related application services for a particular CI. You can also look at, are there any related items such as incidents, problems, changes, etc. You're also able to select what you see here. So if you say, hey, look, outages are not relevant to what I do, you can apply that and that will be removed. An administrator can configure any additional entries in here. So if there are custom tables that you've added for various applications that relate to the CMDB, as long as they reference a CI, you would be able to add that in here and then make it available to end users. So they'll then just be able to see that new entry in here. We also have changes, so you can look at a history of whatever field changes have been made to that CI record. The other thing that we can do is we can also look at for a grouped CI. So we can see that we've got an application cluster here, which is effectively a group. We also see its members listed in here in separate cards. So in here, we've got the ability to, if we had many different cards in here, you could search potentially by any sort of the attributes that are in here. So it could be owner, could be discovery source, could be the name, the class, etc. You've also got the ability to sort, change the sort results and the sort order and the actual principal thing that you want to sort by. The other thing that we can also view in terms of attributes are connections. So again, if we've got an application service map, we get additional information that's included for a connection. So we basically include kind of like the source and target CI, which is a standard thing. If it's a relationship rather than a connection, then we basically show the endpoint type and the related information.
Hey, Tony.
Yep.
It looks like you might have lost the screen. Can you reshare again?
Not sure why that happened.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully people haven't lost too much.
No, it was only for a few seconds.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So connection information is the sort of thing that we can show here as well. Did mention that we have the ability to show things like infrastructure, so the hosts that are related to applications on a map. So we can see now that we've now got these Linux servers that have been added back into the map. So they're basically now part of the map that you can see. One of the other things that we did as an improvement between the initial release and the latest release is the ability to show or provide some visual indication of what is a member of a group. So if you hover over a parent that has children, you can now see them highlighted briefly. Likewise, if you're hovering over a child, you'll get to see the child and its parent basically highlighted. So one of the other things that we've done is we've also provided support for levels for an application service map. So I'll have to just reload this. When we are working with an application service map and we want to basically sort of open it, by default, it's going to open to 3 levels. You do have the ability to go down to sort of like up to 25 levels of relationship or connection depth. But what we can do is we can basically work with more or less going down to a very small number of levels, like 1 level, right down to, potentially laying out a complete map with the maximum number of levels. Obviously, you'll only go as far as the number of connections that are available for any starting point as a CI. That's the other thing to note. We do have basically a CI here, for instance, that's shown as the home node. It's got this pulsing effect. We can set any other CI as a home node and basically draw a map against that. So we'll just have a look at this one. So at this point, we've transitioned directly to more or less a traditional dependency map. So you can see this one's quite extensive. We can also view it in a force-directed layout, which looks quite complex. But again, if you decide that you want to sort of reduce it down to a much smaller level of relationships, you can do that as well. And again, that sort of helps you work much more clearly with the information that's there. Okay. So yeah, I was basically just demonstrating the fact that you can switch to a force-directed layout, which is the other layout other orientation that we have for maps, and you can then explore the map. This is quite a dynamic sort of layout. It can get very busy as you go up through the number of levels for a very large map. So reducing the number of levels down can simplify what you're looking at, what you're working with. So I'll just go back to our customer management map. So you can see quite here with just one level, there's not very much information, but as we sort of move up to say 6 levels, we get much more information. Then again, we can sort of switch back to, our filtered view. One other thing that we've done is we also provided some more interactive capability with the application services. So I've basically deselected any CI on the map, so I get all of the application services for all the CIs that are on here. If I'm interested in finding out, well, which CIs are actually part of an application service, I can click on one of these cards and it'll be those CIs will be highlighted on the map. Hoping I'm still sharing.
Yeah.
Good. Likewise, for related items, if I was looking at, say, multiple incidents and I want to see, well, which CIs are there, I can click on a card and the map will pan and highlight the CI that's associated with that card. So we see that as a nice sort of feature that we've added in. Right, so one of the other things that we did which is brand new in the November store release, is the ability to ensure that CIs that are retired no longer appear in a map. And the way that we've done that is we've introduced a configuration capability that allows you to decide based on the lifecycle stage field, based on its value, that will determine what actually gets presented in the map. So by default, we've created an entry which uses an operational value for the lifecycle stage field, and provided that all CIs have that, they will be displayed. Now, if you have not, it does rely on the CSDM activation plugin, so you need to install that, and then you need to basically activate the mapping table, which will then synchronize the legacy status fields with the new CSDM fields. Now, if you don't have the CSDM activation plugin installed, don't worry, because we basically say if those values are not being used at all, then we just will display everything. But if you really want to, benefit from, hey, I really don't want to see anything that's retired sitting on my screen, or I don't want to see anything that's in an earlier stage of its life cycle, then please move to CSDM, the lifecycle fields. It's definitely a step forward for the future for you. So what we're going to do is we've got this application service CI that's been linked in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to retire it. I'm going to mark it as retired. So let's, for argument's sake, say that this is no longer a system that has any sort of more business value. So we're going to retire it. So as an admin, I've basically marked that as retired, or I may have even I may have been using something like Data Manager to have a lifecycle policy that may have been used to do this in the background. I'm going to reload the map. Can't wait to add the reload map button to this experience. And then when we get this new map coming back, you'll now see that that CI has been removed from the map. All right, so it's no longer available. In fact, if you try searching for it, you actually won't find it either. So that's one of the improvements that we've made in the November store release, having the support for that. It's also quite important that we've added that in, because it's also what we'll be using to support the edit mode capability, where you'll be able to edit relationships directly from a map in the future. So we plan to sort of introduce that in the first half of next year. but that will rely extensively on the lifecycle stages. But in terms of where you would configure that, we basically have a model that we've built, which basically relies on, first of all, kind of like having an application identifier. So for instance, this is for CMD workspace, but if this was maybe for service mapping or maybe service operations workspace or service portfolio workspace, they would have their own entries here. And then at that point, the configuration, it becomes isolated from CMDB's unified map. There's a mode, so in the future this will have an edit mode, and then maybe even other modes that we may add in the future as other use cases pop up. And then we have a lifecycle list, so this is where we would select the various values that we want to add in to support, or remove them or change them as required. Okay. So we've kind of covered most of the things that we've done. The one last thing that I'm going to show before I sort of maybe go into a little bit of Q&A, but also a couple of things I just want to show so that people understand that there's some configurability that is available in terms of like configuring the unified maps behavior. We'll go through that. But one thing that we're working on at the moment is providing better support for dynamic CI groups. We have customers some customers use these extensively to basically provide another way of managing large numbers of CIs or working with large numbers of CIs that may be, for instance, of a specific class. But they can basically perform various operations and manage them in different ways, including having these dynamic CI groups available for things like event management. So we're doing a multi-step process in terms of like what we're supporting. In the initial release of Unified Map back in August, you could bring up a dynamic CI group. It would be shown as a single node on the map, and you would get its attributes, but that would be it. There wouldn't be any other information that you could get. You could open the details to view the CI record, and then look at, for instance, the CIs that are related to it from there. But it was pretty annoying that you couldn't actually do it from here. So what we've done is we've now included a list of the various CIs that are part of that dynamic CI group in the attributes panel. So we show the first 50 CIs out of that group. If you want to see more, and in this case we've got 63 in total, you can click on a button, or a link I should say, and it will bring you up to a new page, and now you can work with that list of CIs. Now, some customers have some of these dynamic CI groups that can contain hundreds and even thousands of CIs. So in most cases, they're probably going to go to this view when they do want to work with any of those individual records. You can get back to the map fairly easily. Now, in the next sort of phase of what we do for dynamic CI groups, we'll also be adding a map visualization. So we'll be using the force-directed layout, which would basically be limited to a single level of relationship depth by default. And you would see the parent with all of its children surrounding it in a radial fashion. So we see that as being the most effective and scalable way of being able to display a dynamic CI group and its children on a map. You'll also be able to do things like look at the various application services that are related to all of those CIs, plus the related items that are related to all of those CIs, not just the dynamic CI group. So that's kind of like the next phase, which we're planning to work on for the first half of next year. All right, so finally, how do you go about configuring a lot of things? So I mentioned before that in related items, for instance, you've got, as an admin, you've got the ability to add more lists in here, right? So end users are not able to do this, but anyone with the SN_CMDB_admin role will be able to do this. So where do they go to for that? I've basically just put a few favorites in here just to show how we can get there, but we'll start off with kind of like related items. With related items, it's fairly simple to sort of add a record, and then what you're doing is you're essentially creating a filter condition to basically say, what's the criteria for including records or including records to show in that table, in that list. So you can see that we basically have our table. There's a reference field. We may put in an order, but end users are able to reorder things as they see fit. You then put in things like, as far as the cards that are going to be presented in the related items, what's the number field that I want to use as a hyperlink, so I can open a record, short description or title field for the card, the fields you want to display, the sort fields, a footer, and then finally the condition. The other thing that you can do is you can also configure how any of those related records are going to appear on the timeline. So you've got the ability to choose an icon, choose a begin and end date. So that way, if there is something that sort of, might have some sort of a range associated with it, then, that can be included on the timeline. And then finally, the highlight field, what's the field that I want to use to basically indicate like priority, for instance, on an incident. In this case, I'm using type for an outage because that can be degradation, outage, and planned outage. Right, another important one is the extended attributes. So we showed back in the map how you could look at in fact, let me just go back to it quickly. So when we were looking at the attributes, we have these common attributes that basically occupy the top part of a attribute card. We call them the core or common attributes. Then we have the extended attributes, these ones that sort of sitting underneath this divider line. Now they can be configured by an administrator, whereas the top attributes are basically not configurable. They're basically common to all CI classes. So what we can do is we can modify those extended attributes. So we've created a number of these out of the box, but you can obviously modify these as required. These also have following inheritance models. So for instance, for the application class, we have a number of different attributes that are basically set up for display, but you also have other applications which will inherit from or other classes that will inherit from the application class, like say the database instance. And in that case, what will happen is it will take these attributes and then it'll combine them with any additional attributes and display those. The other thing that you can do is you can also mark a particular entry in here for an extended attribute to not follow a hierarchy. So if you don't want it to inherit and you want to basically just provide your own sort of like, override, then you can do that here as well. It's very simple to do. And again, this is what an administrator can do behind the scenes. A couple of other things, we also support references. So in addition to relationships and service mapping connections, you can also have references. So this is where you may have a CI class that may have a reference to another CI class. So for instance, if you're looking at something like a server class and you were looking at, say, memory or memory module, or even network adapter as another CI class that's referenced in a related list, you can actually have that depicted in a map. So you can do that by setting references. And again, we provide a number of out-of-the-box definitions that you can either work with out of the box, or if there's ones you want to add, you can do that as well. There are some class icon mappings. So we are using what we call NDS. It's the Now Design System Icons. It's a library of classes, and it's a component that's used within our user experience framework. It is a set of icons. It's not extensible at this point in time, but it will be in the future. We are adding some specific CMDB specific icons to that library, but essentially if you had your own custom class and you wanted to create or at least use one of the icons from that library, you're able to configure it in the mapping. So we basically have a mapping showing the different labels and the table names, etc. And that works with the actual icons that are actually being sort of like configured or defined in here. So if you wanted to explore the NDS icon gallery, find an icon, you could add it in here and give it a name. So it's got a label, can be referenced, and then you would go to your icon mapping section or list, and then you would basically provide an entry saying, here's my new icon that I've created or that I'm using, defined, and here's the table, the custom, say, CI class that I may have that I want to sort of map it to, and then that'll then be available in unified map. And then finally, the operational life cycles. I mean, I've gone through that and mentioned that before. Now, there is one entry called profiles. This is currently not implemented. We created the definition for this, but this is essentially a way of configuring how a particular CI class or a particular type of CI would be laid out on a map. So you can basically, the idea here is that for a mapped application service, the best way of depicting that would be through a vertical layout. And there's certain CSDM layers that we would want to turn off, like the infrastructure layer and the business layer. We'd want to turn those off by default to provide the sort of more familiar service map view. But for other types of CI classes, you might want to say, hey, force-directed layout makes a lot more sense to show this. So what we'll be doing is we'll be providing the support for that behind the scenes, hopefully in the next release, which is scheduled for February. And it will be adding in also support for the number of the relationship depth. So how many levels should I see when I open a particular CI type in a map? So you can configure these. Again, there's an inheritance model, so you've got the ability to more or less say, do it for this class and inherit for all others. Or it could be a case of, hey, there's one specific one, which is an override like we have for a mapped application service. So they are pretty much all of the things that you can configure, at least as an administrator, which would then impact the way that unified map behaves. Final words. So unified map is built on our user experience framework. If you were really, really game and you wanted to play with it, it does have more or less a page template that's associated with it, which you would have to modify in UIB. I do not recommend doing this unless you are an expert at UIB and really know the CMDB's data model in excruciating detail. There is a lot of work that we had to do behind the scenes to wire together all of the various components to deliver a map that looks like this and works like this. And as I said, in future, we will be sort of extending the capabilities, delivering things like an edit mode. We'll be probably incorporating chat into this at some point, so you'll be able to invite a colleague to view a map that you might be working on. So they would basically send a link to the map. They could then view the map, and you could at least both sort of view a map. It isn't a case of like doing the sort of thing that we might be doing over a Zoom or Teams sort of like sharing screen sort of session, but it would be more or less a case of at least being able to provide people with the ability to collaborate potentially over large distances, and sometimes without those collaboration tools in place, just leveraging the ServiceNow platform. We also want to work on making that chat experience use the Now Assist sort of virtual agent, where you could essentially ask questions of the CMDB, like show me my list of application services. It would then give you a list. You could click on one and it would basically be displayed in a map. And then potentially you could also be using that virtual agent to filter the map. So that could be some of the other sort of things that we'll be working on delivering in the future as well. All right, that pretty much wraps up the demo.
Thanks for your participation. Thanks for explaining it to us, and thanks for building it. Really, I think this is going to make a lot of operators and administrators and just folks that work and use technology very happy and very powerful in the future. So thanks very much for being with us today. Just a reminder that there's a survey coming out. Please fill that out if you can. It helps us to make better content, and stay tuned to Live It Now for more CMDB, ITOM, and ITAM content in the future.